Linux OTC. Welcome to episode 4. We're your hosts. I'm Bill.
I'm Norbert.
And I'm Leo.
All right. So, self hosting. Who's doing it? Why are we doing it? What are we doing?
I've been doing it for about a week,
That's it?
and
That's all?
yep,
Oh,
yeah, and
boy.
that's why I suggested the topic. And during that week, I managed to have a Nextcloud
Oh,
instance
yeah,
up,
yeah.
and I decided to go. I was either going to choose Debian or NixOS, and since I've been really intrigued by NixOS these past months, I just decided to go with that. And it's really easy because I didn't even have to touch Docker or any containerization because everything I could just do with the Nix configuration. NixOS has very uh, well, basically everything I needed I could configure in Nix, and even Nginx as well as the HTTPS via Let's Encrypt. Uh, all of that in Nix config. I wrote that, I rebuilt the system, I rebooted, and everything was just working. So I'm very amazed by Nix
So, you're running
all as a
Nextcloud
whole.
on bare metal
Yep,
on NextOS. You
yep.
got it
You gave me
exposed
the
to the
idea to
internet
try that. You gave me the idea to try that because you said you're running it on Debian, but not in Docker, as far as I remember.
It's running on Ubuntu, but not in Docker. No, I do have one in Docker just to play around with, so that I can see. So, How are you managing the static IP problem? Did you get a?
Well, the trick is that I don't. I I have ended up using a one of these dynamic DNS providers that point a domain to my IP, and every time it changes, it just points to the new IP.
Using DuckDNS or
No,
DuckDNS is a service out there. Okay, so for those that don't know, um, if you're going to serve something from home and you want it to be internet facing, you've got a couple of options. The most popular option is to have a static IP address, meaning your IP address does not change. The other option along these lines is a what's called dynamic DNS, meaning that okay, for first off, when way back in the day, sit down kids, story time. Way back in the day when TCP/IP was invented, the powers to be at the time saw the future and they knew that IP version 4 in all of its glory was not perfect because it's four three-digit numbers, and that you've got a lot of possible combinations of four three-digit numbers, but not an infinite number.
Yeah, because they're 8-bit, right? So you end up with a 32-bit space
Right.
total.
So what do we do? Well, let's invent this thing. We'll call it DHCP, and what it basically does is every time your router restarts, it might get a new IP address. That way, if an IP address is not being used, it's free for the rest of the internet to use, and that's just fine for Joe and Jill six pack that just want to watch Netflix videos. But for somebody that wants to serve something to the internet, that's not going to work because imagine you call the fire department, and you tell them my address is I don't know 205 70 50 117 or something like that, and then they leave the fire station halfway to your house, your router restarts and you've got a different IP address, and now that fire department's getting routed. This is a terrible analogy, but the point I'm trying to get at is that when you have dynamic host names, your IP address could change, and then people that are trying to get to your website are not going to be able to do that because DNS does not know where to send the traffic, where to route the traffic to. Static IP addresses solves this problem by basically just having a single IP address assigned to your router, and then you never have to worry about, no matter how many times you restart the router,
And
all of that
that's what you
traffic.
did, right, Bill?
Yeah, that's what I did. That was because dynamic DNS is fine, but if I was going to have the website running here in the house, and people were going to be connecting to that to get, handshake to get, the download and everything, you do have this really slim possibility of like there being a few minutes in between the router restarting, getting another IP address, and then whatever cron job is reaching out to a DNS provider to update the records. You could, in theory, run into a problem like that. So just to avoid it altogether, I just paid the extra $13 a month and got a static IP address, and everything just works.
I've
Yeah,
accepted that I'm not an enterprise, so I accept my fate. And if I needed dynamic DNS, I would just set it to update. Well, I used to set it to update every maybe 30 minutes or an hour or something like that because I used afraid.org for their dynamic DNS, and they made it really really easy. They told you what to do
Yeah,
to reach out and update that IP address, which just happens, by the way. You contact afraid.org with a little bit of information, and then it will update on your behalf. Um, and that's pretty much it, which is really kind of nice when you're on a dynamic IP address, and that might change when you reboot next time.
right. But well done, Norbert. That's Nextcloud on bare metal right off the bat. That's
I
impressive.
mostly attribute this success to Nix because when I looked at the tutorial for Debian how to get Nextcloud on bare metal on Debian, you have to manually install and configure a bunch of dependencies.
Yeah,
Nix just say service does Nextcloud that enable equals true, and then you set some parameters, which version of it would you want to use, where's the what directory you want to use as the home for Nextcloud where it stores everything, and you also need a SQL database.
I got to
So
try
I
that.
just configured Postgres for it, which was recommended, as well as Nginx, which was recommended, and when it starts up, it just reaches out to Let's Encrypt and it fetches a certificate, which is kind of amazing that it just works like that,
It
as
just
simple as
sounds
that.
an awful lot like Docker Compose. Docker Compose for the operating system. Everything's
Yeah,
declared up front, and then it just works. That sounds
I do want
slick.
to figure out how to use Docker as well because of
Ah,
basically that's the easiest way to run everything. But because I decided to go with Nix, and Nix has basically everything
it's
and
worth
more in
learning.
their repos. Yeah, I was just curious to see how far I can go without using Docker or anything similar.
Well, the thing about Docker is you can have all these different services running on one machine, and your only limitation at that point is,
Your imagination.
well, I mean the resources of that machine, because
No,
all
just your imagination. You can get
just
crafty with those
okay,
resources, man.
yeah, and you just wait in line.
Well, that's the idea, right? I mean,
Yeah,
do you really need the file right now?
I
This
mean,
is a sixth generation Intel NUC, and it's a sixth generation i7 CPU with 4 cores, 8 threads, as far as I know. And the first thing when I got the thing was to upgrade the RAM from 8 to 16 because I didn't really want to take any chances. I'm using nowhere near that much, not even
oh, if you
8.
got
And
16 gigs, you're
yeah,
golden for
yeah,
Docker.
yeah. I
Docker, I mean,
also I also gave it 16 gigs of swap because I assumed I wouldn't need it because of how much RAM it has, but just to be sure,
mm,
if I ever want to like move large files or something, maybe swap would be useful.
learn the next thing I want you to go and learn is Nginx proxy manager, which itself is a Docker container, and then learn how to make self-signed certificates. Because when you put something behind, let's say you want to run a bunch of services on one machine, and they're all in Docker containers. They're all going to be listening on a different port number, and
Yeah,
you can change
and
that.
if you, as far as I know, if you want to run a web server, so you want it to be accessible on the browser, it has to be port 443, which is the
Well,
HTTPS port.
okay, but if you're using a proxy manager, there's some
Yeah,
flexibility there because you can, if you're using a self-signed certificate, you can use any port you want, and the Nginx proxy manager will trust that certificate, and then it will proxy that off to port 443, and then it see you need a self-signed certificate between the proxy manager and the service that you're running, and then from Nginx proxy manager, it's got its own mechanism for creating or going out and getting and then keeping up to date your Let's Encrypt certificates.
yeah. I knew this was a deep rabbit hole when I decided to start, but it's a lot deeper than I thought.
Yeah, it's
Just,
worth.
just networking as a whole.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, you learn these things one at a time, though.
I felt so,
or
I felt so accomplished when I got NixOS set up and running,
Yeah, I mean, rightly
and
so.
now that's probably nothing compared to networking.
it's a
But-
piece of. So
Well,
you're in the right realm, man. But
yeah,
you could also just use Caddy, which is
yeah.
leagues more simple than Nginx. Yeah, just a couple commands will get that reverse proxy done for you for
I
each
also
service
heard
that you
good
I
want to
things
run.
about. I
that
also had good things about traffic, which is another reverse proxy.
It'll do that. Yeah, yeah. I
As
think
far what I've heard, it
for
plays really well with containers.
yeah
well,
for
Other than that, I don't know
have
much.
you tried the GUI, the Nginx proxy manager GUI?
No,
Because that
I just told Nextcloud to set up its own uh, Nginx thing module.
because
Or
I
is it
wanna.
the other way around? Okay, for now I just wanted to have Nextcloud accessible. The next step is probably trying to figure out how I can run something else other than Nextcloud simultaneously and be able to access both.
So here's Nginx proxy manager. Once you set it up, you've got to log in it, and as you can see, it's connecting to a specific port number and a local IP address. I probably share way too much. You sign in. Now here is my hosts. These are all the things that are running behind the proxy manager, and they've all got a different port number.
Hmm.
But then this handles all of the certificates too. Here's all the certificates, and you've got the aliases and the somewhere on here is right here is mintcast.org, and then
Yeah.
www.mintcast, and this is handling all of the SSL stuff automatically. And all I've got to do. Well, I mean, this once you get this set up, it's brainless. And to add one, you bring down this, and if you got the self-signed certificate, HTTPS, you put in the host name, and then it generates the certificate right here. I mean, this is to me it's simple, but I don't know.
well,
Yeah, and it's like
how many times did it take you to set that up to get it right?
Well, um,
Simple because you've
hmm.
played with it, right?
Well, I mean, but when I first started trying to set this up, I really didn't understand the concept
Oh,
of,
right, and that's what I mean.
you
That's
know,
exactly what I mean. All I'm saying is that simple to you now was not simple to you the first time you tried it.
yeah, yeah, you
So
do have to wrap your head around a few concepts that maybe are not things you're used to thinking
a
about.
lot of networking concept,
Networking,
the 8-bit segments of that
yeah,
32-bit IPv4 address are huge, a
yeah.
huge part of what's going on. Then understanding ports and what they do and why they work the way they work. It's also a huge undertaking. Can you just slap IP addresses that you had someone on Google help you figure out? Sure. Understanding them though, understanding what you're doing when you're checking
Yeah,
those boxes and actually typing in those IP addresses though is something that I think you have to have before you end up a admin ninja. You know, you set that stuff up. So there's a lot. There's a lot to go back and learn is
I
what I'm
think.
getting at, and I think that's what your front end actually kind of masks a lot of the difficulty, and Caddy
Oh,
does as
yeah.
well. There's a whole lot less to know when you're setting up something like that than if you were doing it from scratch. You know, you just apt install Nginx and have at it. A little different, a little harder.
Little bit different. It's a little more hands on.
Yeah.
Sudo make install something.
Yeah, we're not doing that. No.
Yeah, yeah. On Linux from scratch.
Yeah, not at
So
all. Not for
we
a server
basically,
anyway. I want Ubuntu or I want Red Hat or Rocky or Alma or one of these guys handling all of that stuff. Or in my case, Docker itself. I'll just
Yeah.
use the Docker debs that they provide and use their newest Compose, which is written in Go, which is really nice because the when you're pulling down containers, it's prettier. I like that because I'm a command line junkie, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I like pretty in the command line.
So Bill, you have this one instance of the Nginx reverse proxy running on one of the machines, and it can serve services from all the various machines on the LAN
To
to the.
grossly oversimplify it,
Okay.
uh,
So I don't need to have a reverse proxy running on multiple machines if I run stuff
no,
on multiple machines.
Just
no,
need one.
yeah, because with the
Okay.
reverse proxy sitting on this machine, all the traffic
Yeah.
is
So
coming through on this machine, goes through this reverse proxy. It sees, and it's connected to all these other machines on all these different ports that they're on, and it's saying, okay, this traffic wants to connect to mintcast.org, so it sends it over here.
yeah, to that IP
So,
and that port, and
right.
at that point it just arrives.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And you've got TLS from end to end. I mean, by the time it hits, I've actually got everything behind. I mean, I'm kind of double proxied because I've also got it all behind
So
Cloudflare too.
when so what's open to the internet from all of that is just the proxy itself.
Correct. The
Yeah.
only thing that's directly connected to the outside world is the reverse proxy, and it is the only thing that's got a port forwarded directly to it.
And that's ports 80 and 443, right?
Correct.
Okay, it makes sense now.
Yeah.
And then you also have a SSL within the network between the machines on the LAN.
So I use
That's
OpenSSL.
what I was a bit surprised by.
See, that's the thing you got to go learn how to do because you've got one line where you tell it, make me a certificate um, and it's going to ask you questions just like CertBot does. Not just like, but it asks you some questions, and then it generates the certificate and then um, the key file, and it either
I've
goes in
tried
that.
that. I tried that when I was trying to set up something else other than Let's Encrypt. I used OpenSSL to generate a private and public key, and from that, it was something called a
I can't remember the.
SCR, I think, so certificate request something.
Yeah, it's they've got a command. They got a special command. I can't remember what it's called, but it generates both the key and the certificate, puts them in like slash Etsy slash SSL slash something or other. And then what you've got to do
CSR,
is
sorry. Certificate signing request, CSR.
um, what you've got to do then is when you got to go to your virtual host file that's in the sites, not sites available, sites activated for the slash Etsy slash Apache 2 slash whatever, and add in SSL engine on. I'll tell you what, go to uh, DigitalOcean. They've got some of the best tutorials for setting this stuff up. They've even got the command that you can literally copy and paste. And the cool thing is you in that command you tell it how long you want the certificate to last for. So you can literally create 10-year self-signed certificates and then put that behind the proxy and never worry about that again. And then the proxy just updates the Let's Encrypt stuff automatically. The
But
stuff just
the Let's Encrypt stuff only lasts 90 days. I don't think they'll let you change that.
no, but the proxy manager's got a
Right.
mechanism to run that. Probably just certbot,
Hmm.
but it keeps that up to date automatically. But the self signed certificate that you generate between your service and the reverse proxy. You can set that. You can tell that to last for 10 years if you want to.
So to get back to the original question, which was, what are you running? Ignore the proxy for a moment.
Okay.
What are you running?
Okay. This machine has, boy, I got to bring it up just to,
I think you will
okay.
be hearing a lot from me, Bill, when I decide to set up reverse proxy, because you seem to,
No, we're supposed to ignore the reverse proxy. We're supposed to ignore that so
yeah,
Bill can tell
Well,
us
yeah.
what he's
there is a
running.
third option for setting this up. You can
Oh no, we're
actually
talking
let,
about more.
you can, if you don't mind, if you don't mind,
We'll
like
get there,
poking,
folks. We'll get
yeah,
there. We'll tell you what we're running.
okay. I was just gonna say, if you don't mind poking more holes in your firewall, you can just proxy it off to um, Cloudflare or something like that. That's another option. Anyway, so I've got two pies down here. One's running the 3ftpodcast.org, the Three Fat Truckers website. One is running Piehole. Um, this machine, the same machine that's got the proxy manager on it, is running Audio Bookshelf, which is uh, kind of a audiobook solution that I can connect to with my phone and listen to audiobooks on my own server. Um, it's running Jellyfin, and this has got three 12 terabyte Iron Wolf NAS drives in it that are on a ZFS mirror that's serving up to my Jellyfin. Um, that's got roughly, I don't know, 800 movies, 800 TV shows, whatnot.
And you've paid for all of these, surely.
These are 100. Yeah. Let's move it on. This machine's got mintcast.org. You can't see it on camera, but I've got a Rock Pro 64 right here that's running the website for this show, linuxotc.org. This machine is running Nextcloud for myself and Mintcast and Linux OTC. This has also got a ZFS mirror in it, but it's not anywhere near as big. It's two terabyte Iron Wolf drives. Uh, and then I've got a Pi Zero that's actually running a little blog site of mine that I just throw stuff on there sometimes. But every single one of these things is exposed to the wider internet. Oh, and I've got a Collabora server running in a Docker container on this machine, which gives us the document server capabilities in Nextcloud, um, which works better than just using the built-in default thing. Yeah, it's the same functionality except it's set up more for the enterprise because it allows you to have more people connected to it. It's you actually running your own document server, which is also a Docker container. All of these things, basically, with the exception of the websites, are running in Docker containers. And I've got a container on this machine called uh, Lighthouse? No, Watchtower. It's called Watchtower. And what Watchtower does is it keeps track of uh, all of your containers. It checks for updates, and if there are updates, it pulls the updated image and
And you named
elegantly,
that server Jimmy, right? Because all along the watchtower, man.
yeah, um, and it elegantly shuts them down, restarts them, and it's kind of a set it and forget it. And this stuff all just hums along. I've not had a single problem, and most of these, with the exception of the audio bookshelf, most of this stuff has been running for about a year and a half.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I've got a few things. I have to think about it because I'm not sitting right next to it. I have it all stacked up on a shelf next to the modem, and my router and everything else. So let's see. I've got a three 4 terabyte drive NAS that two of those disks are running Plex, similar to you, Bill, and your Jellyfin. And then I've got one 4 terabyte drive that is that Nextcloud is using. It's what I use to drop all the files, right? Like all the audio, all the video, all the everything for any show that I do. It all goes over there for backup purposes. Then I've got just a little cron job that'll rsync that 4 terabyte disk to an external 4 terabyte disk just over USB. I'm not too worried about the speed. That happens every night. So any file I've added to it gets replicated overnight. So if something crazy happens to one of those disks, I still have a good copy. I'm not a huge fan of doing RAID or anything that requires more than one disk at a time. I know lots of folks are huge advocates for that because it mirrors and it stripes and it has parity and all of that. Yeah, well, when one disk goes, you kind of have to replace it like soon, especially if you're in a situation where you're doing. Bill, you mentioned like 3 discs in a mirror.
Yeah.
There's got to be some kind of striping going on between those two because I suppose it'd be something akin to ZFS's or TrueNAS's version of RAID 5, like ZFS level whatever. Um,
It's keeping a. It's literally just a ZFS mirror. It's keeping a cache on an SSD that's in there, and that it literally it appears to my untrained eye, I guess you could say, that it is a bit for bit copy on each one of these
I
drives.
I suppose it is. Oh wait. So what you're saying is that you have 3 discs with the same
Yeah,
exact data on all three.
correct.
Oh, then okay, right, okay.
Not a backup. I don't consider it a backup, but it means that number one, it improves the throughput. So
I
with
see. Yeah.
yeah, I could literally have hundreds of people connected to that Jellyfin instance, and it won't slow down the.
Oh, it'll be your CPU at that point.
Yeah,
That's going to
well,
be the
yeah,
bottleneck.
but it's got quick sync and all that stuff. I mean, it just flies. I don't know that I'll ever get the chance
That's
to
really
push
cool.
it. Yeah,
Anytime I've ever heard anybody push for any type of raid, it's never been that conservative, which is, I think, a good thing if you're going to be doing raid. Because if one of those discs dies, then you're not really in the same boat that you would
no,
be if
you
you were on
you
like a 2 disc mirror or something like that. Um, if you're on a 2 disc mirror, you lose one disc, then you have no redundancy. There's nothing
correct.
back there unless you back it up, right? But anyway, when I hear people talk about RAID, I never really hear about backups, and I never really hear about what their plan is because a lot of times they're talking about huge disks, like 12 terabytes, like you are, Bill,
Yeah,
and those aren't cheap. So when you need to replace them, especially when you're in some kind of RAID 5, RAID 6, whatever ZFS does, that's better than that. Um, then you're really up a creek. You're really in a pickle because if you don't replace those disks, you are in a degraded state, which means that everything is slower. And if another disk dies, then you're also really in a pickle. Um, and when people buy disks, they buy them all at once, don't they?
yeah.
Yeah, and
These
then a lot of
these
times
NAS
if you
drives are not cheap either. That's
right,
why
and
I wanted to avoid those complicated Z RAID
yeah,
setups where you've got this weird. I can't even wrap my head around how it works because you can basically have. Whereas right now I've really only got 12 terabytes of addressable space.
you're doing it right. You're doing, I
Yeah,
think, the only way that I'd be comfortable doing any kind
yeah,
of raid. So that's really good. But my last point on that was everybody buys, well, most people when they buy a bunch of storage buy it at the same time from the same manufacturer, usually from the same store, and that's the same lot. So if there's something wrong with the hard disk, like something physically mechanically wrong with that hard disk, there's a good chance that the entire lot is going to be have the same type of flaw. So when one goes, another might go,
that's the
and
unfortunate reality of it.
it's
And
not
it's
though. You don't have to do that. You can buy one disc at the same size from a different store from right there are ways that you can get around that particular issue, and I'm not saying that that's a super common issue. I'm just saying everybody, when you start dealing with hosting your own stuff, you
Mm.
realize very quickly that when it rains, it pours.
Oh yeah.
It's never just one thing that goes wrong. It's always things come in pairs, man. Weird stuff always happens in pairs. And anyway, so all I'm getting at is do your homework, be prepared for
Yes.
stuff like that. So
And
anyway, uh,
and do
so
backups.
oh god, do backups.
Yeah.
So Plex and
This is
Nextcloud are
all
on
very.
on.
Sorry, I
Oh,
just wanted to say this is all very intriguing to me because when I decided to start host, I also looked into Raid,
don't
and
do
as
it.
far as I
Don't
know,
do it
yeah. So
unless you
okay,
have
so
extra discs on hand. Don't do it.
yeah, so as far as I know, Raid One, is it Raid? No, Raid One
No,
is
that's
when
right.
you have two disks and you just mirror them,
Raid one,
and
yes.
You
Raid
can
Zero is when you
consider the
stripe the data.
number. The number corresponds directly to the number of drives that you can lose.
Okay.
So a RAID one
No, Raid
gives
5. You
you.
definitely can't lose 5 discs because you
Well,
don't need. You
okay.
don't even need 5 discs to do Raid 5.
I've never used RAID 5.
It was great for a
What?
while.
So what doesn't what I don't really want to set up where a disk loses its individuality. What I mean is that if I want
Hmm.
to have two disks with the same data, and I can just take one and use it in a case where I only want to use one, and then just sync them later if anything changes. So what
Well,
you're describing, Leo, the cron job, the
Hmm.
rsync
RC.
solution, that sounds a lot more up my alley than doing
Yeah,
a raid.
because here's the deal, right? Like I don't have to buy two similar speed discs to do this, like you do with Mirror. If you buy a fast RAID NAS disk and then a slow NAS disk, then your Mirror will run at the slowest NAS disk. This is another reason I don't like using RAID because you're bound
you
by
got
what
some
you buy.
caching that goes on with CFS,
Okay, with
and
the
that.
sure, but I think if you're moving large files, you're gonna still be in that same situation. And I move 8, 4, and 10 gig files quite often,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's enough cache to handle that
Like,
many files without having to drop down to just disk speed.
so this has got 64 gigs of RAM in it, which means I can plow a 10 gig movie onto this thing at just the speed of RAM. And then it sits
Well,
in that
at the
cache.
speed of 1 gig,
Well,
at the speed of your network, right?
the speed of, yeah, whatever I can push through my category 8 cable through these switches, to get from one machine to the other. But then it goes the human facing impactful process is it going onto RAM and into the cache that ZFS uses, and then the actual writing process, is going on secondary to that.
So when you do caching like that, you're I guess kind of in a situation where if you lose power, what's in the cache is gone.
Yeah, well,
Right.
yeah.
So
I
there are
mean,
trade-offs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree with you, and that is it would be faster. And as a matter of fact, you can delay writing so that you continue to have fast
yeah,
speeds, at least perceived fast speeds, because this is something that happens in Linux all of the time, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves. You know when you write a flash drive in Linux, and then it says it's done, and then you pull it, and then half the data's not there yet? It's the same reasoning that data's not there, that you corrupted that drive because you pulled it before
yeah.
all the data was written to the disk, because the user facing information that you see straight up told you that it was done, but it was not done. You
Yeah,
have to flush the caches before you pull that disk, and that's what, safely remove or whatever.
and that's why
But
that
here's
takes
the
I
so
thing.
never
long
I
after
never
you
skip
hit that.
that.
And
I always unmount.
yes, but here's the thing, right? Like, I mean, I grew up. I learned my admin chops on Windows disks, and you know what you can do when you write a flash drive on Windows? Pull it immediately. There is no caching, and this got me into the habit of screwing myself in Linux because I thought Linux would be just as smart, if not smarter. But it turns out in this situation, you have to take an additional step The safely remove is imperative.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that
I
frustration of
also safely
caching
remove on
would be
Windows as well.
compounded when you have 10 gig movies in cache. That movie ain't there whenever if you lose power, something like that happens
But
or
it's still
whatever.
on the other end where I was sending it from. Is I
Sure,
mean,
sure,
you
but
and you can tune all these things if you
well,
want less cache and
you
more
say that,
write.
Bill, but I do still have that ISO that I was writing to that flash drive that was corrupted when I pulled it early. That is that I don't. That's not really the issue that I'm getting at. It's more just the frustration of losing the data in transit when the user facing thing told you it was fine, told you it
Yeah.
was done, and and then it wasn't. So you don't have all the information. I would be curious what it would take to learn how long it takes TrueNAS to get whatever's in cached RAM onto disk. That's an interesting thing because that's the window you've got of danger time of difficulty of losing that file. So how long does that yellow flag stay out when you're moving these files, man?
Now ZFS has another option where you can offload that caching to a SSD as well too.
That would be fine because after another boot, it would probably remember it needed to
Yeah.
move it from that cache to the actual cold, well, not cold storage, but slower storage.
I'm not sure how many if people still use that. That was a popular option years ago when
Oh, yeah, because Nimble, I think Nimble came out with it first, where they had front end storage with SSD and then
yeah,
back end storage with spinning disks, and it was blazingly fast. But
seemingly blazingly fast.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
SSH
Well,
is
that's the
better
thing though.
thing.
Like when your cache is disk, when you can pull the plug and the data doesn't go anywhere, then it is actually that fast.
Yeah.
It's moving it to that slower storage that didn't happen, that would happen after a reboot. That you're really not going to have to worry about. You don't lose anything in a situation like that. But RAM, on the other hand, using that as your cache, that puts you in um,
Big
a situation, not a scary one, not a bad one. Just if something were to happen with that data still on RAM, that particular bit of data is gone now, and you'd have to redo. And I hope you have those files on hand. You have to redo that transfer after you bring that machine back
Yeah.
up.
And you're right. It's worth considering to make sure. I don't know. Make your backups. Test your backups. Test your writes. I don't know.
This is why I like
Yeah.
flat file systems. This is why I like
Yeah.
the way that Nextcloud in Snap is handled.
So my problem with Snap on with the Nextcloud is that it's not a straightforward process to choose a drive other than the one the Snap is
Oh,
installed
it's
on.
straightforward if you go to leochavez.org and find the way that I set it up because I set it
Okay,
up
so you
on
did like what,
extra
like a
disks. Eh,
alias or whatever, or a bind mount. That's what I was looking for. Or did you just
It's just a regular old disk mounted where I mounted in slash Nextcloud.
okay?
Yeah,
And
not
you
I
did
mean
that.
nothing special. I keep my stuff as simple as possible because I don't want to be a full-on admin at home. I want the stuff that I want to self-host, but I do not want to be tinkering with it or having too much time and trouble setting it up in the first place. Just simply because I don't want to deal with it. I'm bad at I have a hardware upgrade that's been waiting on me for about 8 months just because I'll get
Yeah,
to it. I'll get to it. But and it goes the same way for software. I don't want to have to fiddle with it very much. And if I do, then I'll probably try and find another way to do it. So Nextcloud and Snap, I mean, requires maybe about 6 total commands to get
yeah,
it done. They're all documented on my website, and it shows you how to set up a disk, a RAID, a whatever. All you really need is a mount point to point the snap at, and it'll store it there. But the cool thing about it is that you do not need a database. Here's why I didn't want to run Nextcloud myself. I did not want to have to do database administration to be able to pull files out whenever something goes wrong. The cool thing about the way that I have it set up and the way that Snap stores its files is that it is just flat. So you can go to, as root, in slash Nextcloud and see every single file. That is immensely useful to me because if I, for some reason, I don't know why, but I just needed to SSHFS into that Nextcloud machine and pull a file, I could. I don't have to do SSHF, or I don't have to do SSH and then use all kinds of crazy database tools. I say crazy; they're not that crazy. You just have to learn them. A bunch of database tools to pull out a file. I don't want that, and so Snap it is, man. It's just simpler.
So you're using like a simpler. I assume you're using like a simpler type of database that
There
doesn't
is no database. It's
none.
no, because what Nextcloud does is it stores its files in a database, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you, my files are just in the file system, no database.
So does that hold up well when you're using that instance to collaborate with other people? Does it hold
Well,
up?
I don't do that. This is more for me. This is
Okay.
so that I mean I use the Notes app, so but I don't collaborate. It is Google Drive for me as only the storage. Not I don't use Word or any of that stuff. I like Markdown, and that works best in Nextcloud Notes. So I just use that if I need to write anything down. So collaboration, that I never covered that because I don't use that.
Right. That's the thing I was thinking about because I considered the no database route too because I wanted my first thought was I wanted to create something that was portable if I had to. If the
Hmm.
whole thing,
That's my
went to
whole
pot,
whole
I
point.
needed to move it. But then, I would have given up. It would have really been tough to get the other guys to use it because when you've got several people connected to it, it
But
from what
but
I read, it's just not the best option. So
and I
I'm
can see that. The, again, because I try to keep it simple, the simple solution is use HedgeDoc. I mean, it's not that hard to learn Markdown. And even if you don't know Markdown, HedgeDoc provides you with the that trail of icons across the top where it's bold, italic, add a link, do tables, add bullet points, all that stuff. So it's not like you have to even learn the Markdown to use HedgeDoc, and it's super lightweight. Runs very easily in Docker, responds well to reverse proxies. I don't. It is the simpler solution, and yeah, it's just a simpler solution
I
for collaborative docs. That is.
we'll see how the future goes. Right now, I'm trying to just make other people happy. I think, and
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, see,
uh,
you got to make you happy, Bill. You're the admin. You get to choose. That's the thing. They have to conform. You get to choose,
I
or they can set it up themselves.
I was really surprised I was able to come on the show and then bully everybody to stop using Google like I did,
Yeah,
and it
that was
worked.
that was something while I was on the show that I really wanted to do, but yeah, man, especially toward the end, I just didn't have the time to
Ooh,
even consider self-hosting or anything like that.
Well,
self-hosting a search engine would be another deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. I get okay. So to finish off the list, let me see. I've got an Ubuntu box that runs a small Ubuntu box, like 1 gig, one CPU kind of Ubuntu box, VM in this case, running what do you call that? The Unify controller thing for my Unify access points. I've got another one that only runs WireGuard because I'm a security nerd and I will not double up any service with a VPN. Absolutely not. That is against the rules. So another small machine just running um, WireGuard, and then I've got a full desktop with Ubuntu Mate. Just in case I need to be able to remote into my network and have a full desktop so that I can do something here locally. I have that, and all that. Those three things are all running on ESXi. Man, I love me some KVM. I love the availability of Cockpit to be able to control it, but there's not much that's going to actually beat in user-facing utility tools with a GUI. You're really going to have a hard time beating ESXi all day. So that's all on one box. That's the one that's waiting to be replaced for 8 months, by the way. I have a smaller, more efficient box that has more storage and faster storage, but I'm just lazy.
I've got Cockpit running all over the place here too, and
Cockpit's
it,
fantastic, but
it's it expects. I don't know. It's written for Red Hat. It expects Network Manager to be running,
now
which
why are
if
you
you're
not running Network Manager, Bill?
well,
Come
because
on.
I'm running Ubuntu server, and Ubuntu server uses NetPlan,
Oh, sure enough. Yeah, that's right.
and um, the Pies are just using Resolve Conf or
So then do it backwards. What you do is install the desktop on whatever you're running, and then uninstall the desktop. So the desktop always comes with Network Manager, but the server, yeah, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
installs with NetPlan, which
I
I don't
tried
think
that
is.
with I tried that with Ubuntu and removed GNOME. Basically, remove everything that's GUI related,
Mhm.
and because I wanted to see if I could install another desktop, in this case XFC, on Ubuntu, and not Ubuntu XFC, regular Ubuntu. And for some reason, it always tried to pull back the GNOME desktop as a dependency. That was weird.
I've had
Mm,
mixed results for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to use the app tooling to figure out what's bringing that back
yeah.
in and
But
get rid of it,
is there no
or
way
break
to
the requirement. I guess.
is there no way to select Network Manager on Ubuntu server?
I'm sure there
Well,
is. I mean,
you could install it and disable the service for NetPlan, and then
yeah, I don't
enable the
remember if
service.
surely NetPlan's a service, right?
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
it
know,
is.
but because you don't really mess with it that way, there are net plan commands to do what you want to do. So I never
Mm.
even considered whether it was a system D service or not,
I just
Network
assume everything's
Manager
a system
is
D service.
and it
Network
probably
Manager
is.
is a Network Manager is a lot better than I first thought, because when I first learned about it, it seemed a little, well, I will use the word bloated because I didn't know better. But now I even discovered things like you can give Network Manager a WireGuard config file, and it will set up an interface from
Yep.
that. So Network Manager has native WireGuard capabilities even.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. I got a
Whenever I
couple.
install, I usually go with Debian. I default to Debian for server stuff, and I always just install Network Manager and then the NMTUI.
Oh, I love
Via that I can just,
NMTUI.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
I got a couple other things running. Pi 4 is running a fresh RSS, so that's how I get the news. That's how I anything I put into any of the chat channels or whatever, all that news comes from there, and that is fantastic. That's in Docker, and I've got a Raspberry Pi 2 that I just set up running sync things so that I can push and pull files from Dan for Linux user space. And the Pi 2 is bound by its 100 meg Ethernet port, which means with the overhead, I'm getting maybe like 8 megabytes a second, which is it's not too bad. It's not terrible, I
Yeah,
guess. That
depending on
little
what you're sending through it, you know.
well, I don't need it immediately. So a speed like that is fine because we'll put those files in. It'll check overnight, and then I'll have the files the next day, which is that's fast enough. I don't need it necessarily faster than that. It's when I'm pulling the files off to use locally. That's where I'm tapping my foot sometimes. So I'll just pull all the files at once and then just walk away for a bit
Mm.
and then come back. I don't know if it's worth putting it on my Pi 3. It's all set up, ready for Docker and everything. Oh, and by the way, sync things in Docker. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if I need that, but I have one if I need to move that up, and then I'll use that Pi 2 for something else.
I I've got a plan. As soon as I can get my hands on a Pi 4 for less than $200, I'm going to build a backup server because I do have backup solutions for all this stuff. It just right now what I use is kind of a cold storage option because I've got a external 12 terabyte Seagate drive that I can just plug into USB and then do a ZFS send receive, and that's like the preferred way of backing up. But what I want to do is set up a separate server that really doesn't do much internet facing stuff. It just is there to receive. Like I'm going to use Syncoid, Sanoid, and Syncoid to create snapshots and then back those up to that backup server because I've got external drives that I can use for both of these to one smaller one to back up the Nextcloud and then one bigger one to back up all the jellyfin stuff. Because right now I have to go grab the thing off the shelf, take it over here, plug it in, and then run the backup. And I tell myself I do that once a month, but in reality, it's probably
If you did it once a month, that's the way to do it.
yeah,
You're not meant to have those backup drives attached all the time.
no,
They're supposed to
no,
be in like a different room at least, but maybe
yeah,
in like in a fireproof safe or maybe off-site. But yeah, I mean, this is home labbing or self hosting, not necessarily enterprise level stuff. But it is good to unplug it once in a while.
It that was my go-to method for a lot of years because, in my opinion, it is when things are plugged in and it's exposed. Well, especially if it's exposed to the internet and all the script kiddies get a hold of it. You know that if it's cold storage, if it's not plugged in, you're like light years more safe with your
And
backups.
this is exactly why I don't use a reverse proxy or expose anything directly from myself, other than the WireGuard port. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything is internal only. I WireGuard in, and the firewall has very specific rules that identify my hardware. So even if you were somehow to be able to get a hold of my key, there's information there that wouldn't be present in the key that would still disallow you from connecting to the internal network, which is really kind of nice. Anyway, so from there, it's like if I'm away anyway, all I got to do is just the same thing I would do if I was sitting on my couch, access all my stuff that way. Um, it seems to me to be the safest option, but I kind of want to do Tailscale now.
I
Still
want to try
Yeah,
WireGuard.
that.
I was going to
Yeah.
mention that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also looked at that.
But also another thing, I mean, it's just uh, I've been wanting to do Tailscale for a long time. But again, remember, 8 months? It's still waiting on me. And so, right, like it's all set up, it's all ready to go. I have backups of it. It's I mean, easy as pie to get it all set back up. I mean, it would probably take me 30 minutes total if that VM blew up and I didn't have any backups. It would take maybe 10 minutes. The install would be longer than the configuration would be. I could definitely say that. But yeah, it's just hard. Once it's set up and it's working, and all I have to do is flip a switch on the device that I'm on,
I know.
it's kind of hard to just say, no, let's throw that away and set it all up again from scratch.
I've had the same wire guard running on this thing for you. I probably
Yeah.
ought to generate a new key, but I mean, in reality, how insecure is it really?
Nah,
Uh,
but my WireGuard has been running. I know how old it is because I installed it because I was giddy about getting Ubuntu 2004 when that came out.
yeah,
I was giddy about getting it all up because I think that was the first kernel that had WireGuard built in
yeah.
in Ubuntu LTS. So I was like, heck yeah, let's enjoy the speed. And man, it is fast.
Yeah.
It blows the pants off of OpenVPN all day. But
I tethered
yeah.
my laptop to my phone and then a WG quick command, and
Mm.
then the SSH uh, experience, even on the road in the middle of nowhere, is as though I'm sitting here
Yeah, yeah,
2 feet
yeah.
from this stuff. It's fantastic.
Yep. I love it, man. I love the VPN and I love not having to expose stuff. But that comes at the cost of I couldn't collaborate with somebody if I wanted to that way. Otherwise, I'd have to really set up some like VLANs or something like that, put that server on the VLAN, and then
Hmm.
let people WireGuard into that network. It's again 8 months. It's too much work.
So I
Watch
could
this
just
space, folks.
Maybe
so
one
I
day,
could
yeah.
just so I could just set up Tailscale, which is, as far as I know, a peer-to-peer VPN, and
Yeah.
then not have to
Yeah.
worry about opening any ports. I could just
Hmm.
put my server, my laptop, and my phone on the that net VPN, and
Hmm.
just use. Huh, interesting.
Yeah, there was a
Well,
service like it long time ago. I think it was like early '90s or late '90s, early 2000s called Hamachi,
I used
and
Hamachi. I
and you
used it for Minecraft
yeah,
servers.
yeah. Most people that I knew used it for gaming, but it had I mean, it had a huge leg up against every other remote type connection. Um, just simply because it creates a whole new network, puts all of the devices that you install it on that network, and those devices, only those devices, would be able to intercommunicate. So, and that's just the same idea, but with WireGuard encrypting it all is what Tailscale is, which is fantastic because I love me some WireGuard.
And it's log me in Hamachi, right? At
Ooh,
least it was a log me in product when I used it.
well, I think it was independent, and then LogMeIn bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember that LogMeIn was founded in Hungary, so it's a Hungarian company.
Ah, cool, cool.
That's why I remember that. And my thoughts have been racing listening to all of this because I just I'm trying to figure out still how to make the best use of my hardware.
Oh,
This
see,
little,
the way that you figure this out is that you do it wrong 5 times,
Oh
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's what
and then
I'm
you get
afraid
that's
really
of.
upset
that's a
about it.
given. You
Yeah,
are
yeah.
going to do it wrong several times.
So when
Yeah,
you do it wrong, you'll figure out those things that you don't want to do again, and then
yeah.
you start making a checklist. And then when you're done with all of that checklist, and you figure out all the things that you hate, you then create another configuration that avoids every single one of those things.
You feel
Yeah,
like you're learning how to use a computer all over again because
Yeah.
it's a
it is.
completely different world.
Even after, but I mean, learning Linux was also an experience of learning how to use a computer again. And
Yeah.
when trying to use Linux, install it in a headless TTY system, that's also like learning things all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
I've,
little
I've
Intel mini PC has four full-size USB 3 ports, and it has one. Even though this model came out in 2016, I want to say, it has one Thunderbolt-capable Type-C port, and I really want to figure out how to make best use of that particular port. Because
yeah.
I was thinking I could, because it has like, counting that it has five ports, so I could just hook up a bunch of my external hard drives to it. But because it has the Thunderbolt port, I don't even have anything that's Thunderbolt capable as far as drives come.
I
I
don't
was
either.
thinking maybe I could like buy one of those raids where it's running its own software in one of those dumb raids. When
Oh,
you
like
just put
the
two, you put,
Synology or whatever?
yeah, no, not Synology. I'm not sure. I don't remember the brand. Uh,
Yeah, if you don't want to set up a NAS, you buy a Synology, because
yeah.
it's dead simple and probably one of the best products you can get your hands on if you don't want to deal with it.
Real popular, yeah, because it just
It's real popular for a reason.
people using ButterFS don't even know they're using ButterFS.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? I mean,
I'll
but
be
on top of that, the Drobos and all the others are kind of not as good. So,
I'll be interested to see your if you guys try wire or tail scale because I am kind of halfway interested in that as a concept. I'm wondering how much you could run on that as opposed to poking holes and doing things the old-fashioned way.
I want to say that there's a way to still continue to do Let's Encrypt over that. I don't really remember how though. I never looked into it because it's not something that I need for my network.
Yeah, but
Okay,
anyway,
I found the brand I was looking at. It's Raid Sonic, and they have these very cheap uh, raids. As far as I know, it you just put two drives in it, you turn it on, it puts them in RAID, and what you
oh,
see
it's a
when you
hardware
connect.
RAID
So yeah,
controller.
it's basically like a hard drive enclosure, but a bit smarter in a way when you can put two drives in it and it mirrors them. But then I was thinking, well, I don't really want to do RAID specifically, so but I'm not even sure if I need the speeds of the Thunderbolt port.
Hmm.
I
I
doubt
thought
it.
of yeah.
You're probably not because you're going to be bound by the 1 gig at
Yeah,
best, the 1 gig network card. So,
yeah.
and you don't need Thunderbolt for that. I mean, we're talking that's multiple gigabits per second of throughput, and you're still bottlenecked by your Ethernet.
Oh, I
So,
haven't even told you about my janky temporary setup where you notice that there's nothing but the power cable because right now I have the server connected via Wi-Fi as until I can figure out a
oh
way
yeah,
to use LAN. Yeah, uh, but yeah, I think down the line I might end up maybe getting a separate modem, separate router for them. Maybe
hmm
that would also uh, so they can be out of my hair, so to speak. Yeah, I named. I like to name. I wanted to ask. I asked on Mincast a while back how you name your system host names. Do you have any particular fun names for your servers?
Aztec gods.
Ah,
My name abbreviated, the operating system, the machine. So
Yeah,
yeah.
like this
but
Uh,
machine is
no. My machines are not cattle; they are pets, a hundred
uh
percent.
I'd say mine are pets, but I don't call them by their host name. That's the name that they call each other, really.
Oh
Uh
no, I because I have to type it in, right? Like, so to get to Nextcloud, I have to type in a host name. To get to really anything, right? And then same with WireGuard. I don't use IP addresses. So the cool thing about
I
that
don't
though is
either. I
that
use three. I put the alias or whatever they call it in the config file and
yeah, 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 yeah.
SSHMNT, SSH SRV, SSH OTC,
Ah,
and
okay.
I have everything in my hosts file, so I can just say not SSH my name at
yeah, that'll
IP
work
address,
too.
Norbert,
SSH at
Norbert,
use. Yeah.
your next job is going to be stop using the host file
Oh,
because your laptop or whatever, and then your phone or whatever, and then if you add a third device, those won't know because you'll have to configure a separate host file for each device.
yeah,
Instead,
yeah.
leverage DNS so that you
Mm.
can finally be part of the joke. If you have a problem,
Yeah,
it's always DNS. Always DNS. That
it
came
is
from,
always DNS, isn't it?
yeah, especially in when you're using directory services. Oh no, it's whatever problem you're having. It doesn't
It-
even seem like
Oh, it's
DNS. I promise, it's
definitely
DNS.
DNS.
Yeah,
It is always DNS.
always. So yeah,
Yeah.
but it simplifies your life, Norbert, because you can use one name on any device on your network that's pointing to that DNS server, which you'll
Yeah.
set that up at the router, and so everybody will be pointing at the same one, and then forward everything out to the internet, right? Cloudflare, Google, however you do your DNS outside of that, forward after that.
And I have to learn a lot.
Yeah, you
I
do.
have to learn a lot.
That's
One,
what's so beautiful about self-hosting stuff is that you learn so much when you're doing it, but the fact that it's fun means that the learning is fun too.
yeah, we got to get out of here. Maybe we should.
Fine.
Yeah, maybe we should make this a series because I feel like it'll be fun to bear witness to
Fun
more.
too. I'm not going to compile my own packages. What are you talking about?
I have no objections to it being a series.
Yeah, it'd be fun
If
to watch.
anything, it might also incentivize me to learn more.
Well,
You
yeah,
could
that's what I
we could
mean.
then we could call
Kind
the
of
show self-hosted. Oh wait.
wait.
Ah.
Yeah, that's a
Self-hosted
podcast
too.
that I've been putting off listening to for so long because I was so adamant on, well, I don't really want to self-host anything. If I ever want to have a Nextcloud, I will just go to a
They're
one of
real.
those cloud
Right.
providers like Linode. And I was like,
Oh,
well,
that's
self-hosting
expensive.
self-hosting can be fun, so why not do that?
I wouldn't
And
do
now I have
Nextcloud on
this.
Linode. I
That
might
gets
try.
I
expensive. Oh wait,
Yeah,
Linode. You don't mean Linode. You mean Akamai now.
yeah, I can
It's
buy.
still Linode.com.
For a
Um,
while.
yeah.
I mean, it takes
Nobody's
a
gonna
little
be able to
while.
say Akamai. No, I mean that would be like corporate suicide.
Oh no. Oh no. I mean,
I
no one can say Linode. I don't know, but nobody knows that either, man.
it just
Speaking of
rolls right off of my
pronunciations,
tongue.
I had to look up right
Linode.
I had to look up during the show how I'm supposed to pronounce the host name for my server because uh, can I just quickly rant about the absolute state of
Bill's out
pronunciations
of
of
time. Bill's out of time. You got to save it for part
very
two
Yeah.
of the
quickly
series.
Watch this
pronunciation
space,
of
folks.
Latin names
I
is
got
what
to
I'm trying to
retool
get
all
to.
this stuff. It was. I got to go
I will
record
save
another
my
show. I've been
language
podcasting all
rant
day.
for another time.
Well, yeah, I think it'll be fun to bear witness to your
Again
learning
with the fun
adventure.
two.
I can't. It would also be fun as well to also have
I, j- I
fun.
just I just don't want the listeners to confuse your fun two with Gentu's fun two, and we just got to be clear.
Well, you got to reach deep, find somebody that's gonna
Okay,
catch
you
that
said
one.
TCP more than once this episode. We're reaching deep already.
Oh man. Well, you know what? We got a lot more to talk about, so we'll be back in 2 weeks. Oh shoot. Email the show linuxotc at proton.me. Uh,
Just go to the website, right?
just go to
Just
the
go to the website.
website.
It's all there.
That's
linuxotc.org, right?
that's
Org.
it.
Yeah.
Hey, good, good. I got it right. That's probably good that I know the website.
Yeah, and that's only because .org was $2 cheaper than .com.
Got it.
That org is a lot more classy when it comes to open source.
Yeah, there is that kind of weird sort of nonprofit thing that goes along with that, I guess. But anyway, we will see y'all in 2 weeks. Until then, I'm Bill.
I'm Norbert.
And I'm Leo.
See you, folks.